10. Blasts rock the Merrimack Valley.
Multiple fires, multiple explosions.
Dozens of explosions. Buildings up in flames.
We've asked all residents with gas service to evacuate their property, their homes.
Thousands forced out of their homes and into the streets.
I've never seen anything like this. It looked like Armageddon.
Fire crews from across the state rushing to respond. We have night team coverage of this gas disaster.
And we are continuing to cover this major breaking news here at 10 o'clock. Chaos in Lawrence, Andover, and North Andover tonight when gas line explosions spark at least 70 incidents. This was an explosion at one home and then intense fires in many other neighborhoods like that one.
The explosions and fires lasted for hours in all 3 of the communities, making the response from crews almost overwhelming. This home burning for a long time before any first responders could even get there.
And officials tonight say they have not given the all clear. Anyone who lives in these affected areas who isn't gone needs to go and get to a safe place. Evacuation, they say, is key.
All right, we'll go up live to Sky 7 right now over Lawrence, where the power is out across that city. National Grid turning off the power to ensure everyone stays safe. Governor Baker joined other local officials less than an hour ago for an official update. They say it's going to take some time before people affected by this disaster can return home.
We're hoping we might hear something later tonight, maybe in about an hour, but so far, no timeline. And we know at least 10 people are injured. Crews are also currently trying to figure out exactly what led to this and, of course, make repairs. Night Team Steve Cooper live in Lawrence tonight. He's at just one of the homes, actually a home that was just devastated by an explosion. Steve?
Chickering Street here in South Lawrence is sort of ground zero for all this because this is where investigators say they believe this is where the first explosion occurred here at 5:01 this evening. And what followed was sheer terror and chaos for residents who live in this area and surrounding communities. It's something that no one has ever seen before.
Emergency responders raced to the scene minutes after this house on Chickering Street in South Lawrence is blown apart this afternoon. In an instant and without warning, the chimney crumbling to the ground and crushing a car with a man trapped inside.
There was a couple of guys on the driveway, right? And I told him, call the cop, call 911. And suddenly all the cop car come over.
I came around the corner and I couldn't see all the way down to our house. So I didn't know right away if it was us or not or what, but it's just really scary.
Terrifying moments for residents as police scrambled through the neighborhood, banging on doors, alerting anyone inside to get outside.
I saw a couple of people come down and cops came flying down right away.
Hour after hour, frightened residents wandered through the streets, anxious for answers to questions like what happened here and why.
Your reaction is one of what?
Shock, awe, disbelief. You know, you don't expect something like on this level to happen right in your own yard.
And so it is lights out here in South Lawrence tonight. The power has been cut. The gas has been cut. The area remains sealed off, and with good reason. Police say no one's getting close to that home that was blown apart right now. It's simply too dangerous to get any closer right now. Now that daylight has turned to darkness tonight, officials say at this point they want to keep this area clear. They don't want anyone else getting hurt. All the while, residents are anxious, trying to understand exactly why all this happened today and where they go from here. We're live in Lawrence tonight. Steve Cooper, 7 News Night Team.
Let's give you a look at one of the first buildings to which crews in Lawrence responded. People on the ground say the sky was filled with smoke and it was just overwhelming. Let's go to Sharman Siketti. She is live right in that neighborhood with the latest from there. Sharman.
And we're in South Lawrence on Springfield Street, and that scene just down at the end of the street. But that wasn't the only fire on this street. There were actually a few more all up and down it. Huge flames and thick smoke shooting out of an apartment building on Springfield Street in Lawrence. It's just one of dozens of natural gas-fueled fires that were raging across the Merrimack Valley.
Looked like a war zone here.
Michael Rivera says he saw at least 5 fires break out on his street alone, including inside his own home.
It was on fire first, and then the other houses, and then this house caught on fire too right there. And they just kept on going fire houses.
He says he was out shopping, and when he got back, he smelled gas in his basement. He kicked in the door and saw flames shooting out of the furnace.
We tried to get in, but once I got in, I seen fire, and we started calling the firemen.
Rivera says that's when he and his mother escaped.
Everybody started running out, yeah.
Pardon me?
Yeah, everybody started running out. I ran out. I took my mother out.
He says firefighters rushed from house to house, putting out small fires and shutting off gas. And at the time, firefighters said there was one firefighter who suffered some minor injuries, but miraculously, everyone else seemed to be okay. We are live here in South Lawrence. Sharma Tiketti, 7 News.
This home on Jefferson Street in Lawrence destroyed by flames. You can see firefighters up on a ladder apparatus over the home, but it burned for more than an hour before they could even get there. Tonight, that home is just a shell, and Tim Caputo is there live to report. Tim?
Yeah, Adam, really an unfortunate case here because this home caught fire, and the fire department normally would have probably responded within a couple minutes to try to put out the flames early on, but because of everything going on, all the fire crews were already busy, so this home behind me burned for a long time before the first crews could even get here. You see from Sky 7 HD just how strong and how big those flames were when this fire broke out. They initially started out of the front windows of the house. The entire front of the house began to burn, and then the home was fully engulfed by the time the first fire crews actually started spraying down the house. The first crews on scene were actually Lowell firefighters who were here assisting the Lawrence Fire Department. We're told there were a couple people home at the time. They were able to get out safely. Neighbors say this wasn't kind of an explosion. This started as smoke, essentially coming out of the garage and some of the front windows. Those turned into flames. The flames spread to the attic and roof, and really within a short time, the entire home burned to the ground.
At some point, they were worried it might bring down a power line, actually, so they were asking everyone to leave the area. And it went on for a while. We could see the plume of smoke from my house a couple blocks away, so that's kind of like how we knew there was a fire here.
It was completely blocked off. There was state police up at the top of the road, state police down here, local Lawrence police. It was mayhem, pretty much.
Yeah, it was a chaotic scene, especially when we first arrived. The home was still fully engulfed. They had the ladder up. They were spraying it from above and from the side. The home at that point was already a total loss, but you kind of had this feeling in the neighborhood that nobody really knew what was going on, bigger picture-wise. We did see a number of Lawrence firefighters walking around with wrenches in their hand, going house to house, shutting off natural gas to other homes. People arriving home from work to get to their house. Some of them said they smelled some gas inside their home. They opened up their doors. They sat on their front lawn until things were safe. There was kind of like an hour-long, 2-hour-long period here that was a bit chaotic. It is certainly much quieter now. The electricity power is out in this entire neighborhood. Everyone here has been evacuated. I just spoke with Lawrence Police a short time ago. They said no one is allowed in at the moment. They are cruising around, making sure nobody's up to no good here. But at the moment, it is quiet. We're live in Lawrence. Tim Caputo, 7 News 19.
All right, Tim, you talked about firefighters going with wrenches to turn off gas, and homeowners are encouraged not to do that. We are hearing from Columbia Gas, and that is the company that serves all 3 of these communities affected.
The company released a statement, and it reads in part, "Our thoughts are with everyone affected by today's incident. The first priority for our crews at the scene is to ensure the safety of our customers and the community by supporting first responders and completing safety checks on our system and in the surrounding area. We appreciate the response of local emergency responders and their coordination with our teams." Our coverage continues now with the night team's Caitlin McCauley live in Lawrence with more on what state and city officials are saying about today's situation and more importantly, how we move forward here. Caitlin.
Well, Adam,
just hearing that new statement from the Columbia Gas Company, Governor Baker responded so far, and he's calling their response to this adequate, but he still has a lot of questions for this company, as I'm sure many of the people affected do. This has been the staging area here in Lawrence for all of the emergency responders. You can see there are still firefighters and ambulance teams and police officers out here on standby, ready to respond to any new calls that may come through. Governor Baker told me that he does not expect new explosions or new fires to start. However, fire crews are still being dispatched to homes that previously caught fire and may be reigniting. Here's what Governor Baker and some local officials had to say.
There are still firefighters out there dealing with the remnants of some of the fires that took place earlier today, and I anticipate they'll continue to do that late into tonight and probably into tomorrow morning as well. And we'll probably come back again tomorrow during the day just to be sure that everything that they believe is out is in fact out.
There is no expectation as of right now that people will be able to get back into their houses this evening. So if you're out of your house, stay away from the properties until we have made it safe for everyone.
And again, local officials saying people who have evacuated will likely not be able to return to their homes tonight. Still, a lot of questions remain regarding how exactly something like this happened. We're waiting to hear another update from Governor Baker and local officials, and hopefully from that gas company as well. That's the latest from Lawrence. Caitlin McCauley, 7 News 19.
I think appropriate for everyone to express their thoughts for the thousands of people who have been told to evacuate. They have to find a new place to stay tonight.
It's very difficult to do, but some help is in the offering. Officials setting up a number of shelters throughout those communities to help people. Let's get out to one of those shelters. Kimberly Bookman, live in North Andover. Kimberly.
Yeah, Kim, we are live here at North Andover High School, and we can tell you at this hour the Red Cross is reporting that about 90 people have come to take shelter here. We're standing outside of the building because they just brought in some foam mattresses. People are starting to go to sleep, and we wanted to give them some privacy. But just about an hour ago, they did get a visit from one of their elected officials who promised them he would get to the bottom of all of this.
Congressman Seth Moulton just landed from D.C. and heads straight to North Andover High School, where more than 90 residents have taken shelter.
It's truly extraordinary what's gone on. It looks like a war zone in parts of this community. But I'll tell you what, you come in here to North Andover High School, you meet some of the folks in this shelter, and you see the best of the American spirit.
Among them, Mary Ellen O'Connor.
People knocked on our door, said that we're told to evacuate.
This woman showed up with her beloved pet.
Are you concerned about her safety? I know you're probably concerned about your own, but what about
Oh, yeah. That's why I took her with me. I said, no. I said, I'm not going anywhere. She's coming with me.
But she's concerned how long she can keep her cat here without a litter box and cat food.
Well,
this town selectman says they'll address problems as they come up.
They're going to bring in some cots and some blankets, so try to get, make people as comfortable as possible while they have to wait this out.
This man couldn't evacuate his home without help, but he didn't need medical attention, so EMS brought him on a stretcher to the shelter. His family kept in contact through a text chain from home, school, the train, and work, gratefully reuniting in the school's gym.
Happy we're together. That's the most I can basically say. We're back together, we're happy we're together, and now just going from here.
Moving forward, Moulton says they will assess the damage, and he'll make sure people get the federal support they need.
My team has been on site here from this afternoon. We'll continue to be here to support folks however we can. And down the road, we'll look forward to what we can do for rebuilding.
And once the congressman left here, he went to the command center to meet with officials there. He says he will tour the area, take notes of what's going on, and figure out how to proceed from that point forward. We can tell you the majority of the people who were brought here to the high school are from senior communities in this area. They're staying here overnight, and they'll deal with what they have to deal with come tomorrow morning. Reporting live from North Andover, Kimberly Bookman, 7 News.
That's interesting. Those are seniors, because we're actually going to another shelter, which is in a senior living facility in Andover.
Hearing from people staying there tonight and officials who say they've never seen anything like this before. Let's talk to Jonathan Hall live in Andover, and hopefully you can give us some assurance that our senior friends and relatives are being taken care of tonight up there. John?
Adam, for sure, people are really hanging together, sticking together, much as they did after the no-name storm, the blizzard of '78, you name it. It has that type of feel. I talked to the Andover fire chief. He says he has heard this was caused by an over-pressurization of the gas lines, but he has yet to speak to Columbia Gas. He has never seen a night like this one, and he hopes he never does again.
There's a very interesting saying, after a fire you get rich.
after a streifet, and it's a Yiddish and Hebrew term.
People come together.
People come together. They become close, especially now. It's very interesting. We are in the middle of the 10 days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Perhaps it's a little bit of a reminder for all of us to think that God runs the world.
How have you talked to your neighbors? How are people doing?
I spoke to neighbors. Everybody's concerned about everybody. Everybody's worried, and everybody's concerned to make sure our neighbor was evacuated and on Marwood Drive, and we told them to come stay with us.
Clearly not the Andover fire chief. The Andover fire chief says there were 38 fires here in town, more than a dozen natural gas leaks, and he said it was like Armageddon when he pulled up on the scene. Take a live look out here now. This is the senior center, and there are police on hand here shepherding people in and out. It's been a hectic night in the Merrimack Valley, but we have seen residents keeping their spirits up and helping one another.
Guy, right? But we don't have any information.
Andover's senior center crowded with people of all ages tonight, all seeking answers. What's happening at my house? And when will these evacuations be over? Do you wish you could be home, or do you feel safer here?
I wish I could be home. I just want to go home and transit.
This young woman came home from work at the Tufts Medical Center and was able to save her dog Lucy when she realized her basement was on fire.
And I saw right at the bottom of the stairs where the furnace was the entire thing was just engulfed in flames. I didn't even want to look any longer. I was too scared. So I ran out. I called the fire department, 911, and they came within about 10 minutes. I called just in the nick of time.
With fires burning in the Merrimack Valley and people urged to evacuate but also warned not to open up or close doors, advice from the town of Andover brought confusion in some homes.
You got to turn your own gas off. So elderly neighbors are scrambling all around looking for wrenches. Can you help me turn my gas off?
A rabbi from a local synagogue showed up to support people feeling disenfranchised.
I spoke to neighbors. Everybody's concerned about everybody. Everybody's worried.
Students filled the green at Phillips Academy, many wondering why they had to cut study time and practices short. These athletes were in the locker room ready to shower after practice.
And our coach comes in and yells at us to get out. And, we're like, take it slow, like, oh, whatever. So it was kind of freaky. He keeps on yelling at us to get out.
Those young men told me they never smelled natural gas on campus and did not see any fires. And now we understand we do have the sound queued up with the fire chief here in Andover. Let's listen to that.
Right now, Andover has experienced 38 fires, active fires in this community. We've responded to over 17 additional gas leaks. We've had 4 injuries that were transported to local hospitals. 2 of those injuries were firefighters. I've been in the fire service for almost 39 years, and I've never seen anything like this in my entire career. To sum it up, basically coming into town from a community just outside of here, responding back in, it looked like Armageddon.
Well, thank God for the firefighters, for the chief, for all his men, for all the first responders here in the Merrimack Valley. The chief, as I was speaking to him, he was telling me there were 37 fires. The radio crackled. I said, is that number 38? He said, it is. We have a working fire right now. So this could continue to be going on. We're hoping not. We're live in Andover. Jonathan Hall, 7 News 19.
All right, John, shedding light on the serious and long-lasting impacts of what happened today. And traffic in the Merrimack Valley, by the way, we understand is still being impacted tonight.
Yeah, exits along parts of 495 are closed, and that's to keep people from driving into danger. 7's Dan Housley is here in our newsroom with more on the traffic issues this gas disaster is causing.
Well, Kim and Adam, officials have closed a number of interstate ramps, and the real aim here is getting people out of the affected area and at the same time keeping people from driving into that area. A big section of 495 is open only to pass through or to get out of the affected area. Exits 41 to 45 are all closed. Now, the entrance ramps are open, so you can get on the interstate and out of the area, but you can't get off the interstate and drive into the area through those exits 41 to 45. 93 also has all exits closed at exit 45. So northbound or southbound 93, exit 45, you can't get off, but the entrances are open so you can get on. Now, local roads in the area can also be a problem. If you find yourself in the area, you may find, of course, without power, there are no traffic lights. Mass State Police have said they're going to try to go to the high traffic areas and try to keep traffic moving safely. But in those low traffic areas, you're going to be on your own. Live in the newsroom, Dan Housley, 7 News.
All right, Dan, thanks for the update. Of course, exactly how gas lines and home gas systems work isn't common knowledge, but we're definitely interested now because we want to know what went wrong. How did this happen?
As our coverage carried on today, we were asking so many questions. Luckily, we were able to clear up some confusion about what's safe, what is not. How might this have happened? We talked to an expert about natural gas. So Steve Tellier put that story together for us, and he's here in the newsroom with more. Steve?
Adam, unprecedented. That's how a natural gas expert we spoke with described what played out in the Merrimack Valley today, and he says the issue was likely too much pressure being pumped through those gas lines. And when the system is working correctly, the pressure of natural gas coming through the lines decreases as it gets closer to homes. And there are mechanisms underground that make sure that happens. But if those mechanisms fail, too much pressure gets to a home, natural gas can start filling that home. And with the right mixture of gas and air, all you need is the tiniest ignition source, even the ringing of a phone, believe it or not, and you have an explosion on your hands. Now, Mark McDonald says experts will want to check every home in that area to ensure there are not elevated gas levels inside.
It's going to take a while because they need to assess every single home, and that's, due diligence. They have to make sure before they put the power back on that every single home is safe. It's going to take some time, and it's better to be cautious and uncomfortable than to take the risk of putting, power back on and blowing another house up.
And McDonald says that process will likely take several more hours. In the newsroom, Steve Tellier, 7 News.
Steve, thank you. So we know the feds are now helping with the investigation, helping local and state officials, and the FBI, one of the departments that's there.
Along with the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, you hear those and you think, wow, what's going on? Well, Eric Kane with more on their role with what happened today. Eric.
Yeah, Adam, we have confirmed that the NTSB is sending a GO team to Lawrence tomorrow morning to take a look at what exactly happened. Now, of course, you might be wondering why the National Transportation Safety Board is involved with this. We're used to them investigating plane crashes and train wrecks, stuff like that. But they say that pipelines are considered a mode of transportation since it moves product, in this case, gas. Now, the NTSB doesn't investigate all of these ruptures, but this did rise to the level of something that they want to look at. And just looking at their website, they have investigated major incidents in recent years from Dallas to Minneapolis. And they have also investigated Columbia Gas, which, of course, is the operator involved in today's situation. They investigated them back in December 2012 for a rupture in West Virginia where several homes were destroyed. So they will be coming here to Lawrence tomorrow morning to take a look at this. They view this as a significant event that warrants their attention. Adam, Kim?
All right, Eric Kane, with that information, thank you. To give you some rough official numbers right now, at least 10 people are reported to have been injured today.
Yeah, they're being taken care of at Lawrence General, at least the majority of them, and we know that one of those patients is in critical condition. 7's Brandon Gano is live at Lawrence General with more information about the people hurt today.
Kim and Adam, that's right. We just spoke to the chief of medicine here at Lawrence General Hospital, and like you said, he said that they have treated at least 10, if not a dozen patients, again, here at Lawrence General. He said one of those patients was in critical condition with life-threatening injuries, so that patient had to be transported to another hospital. Another patient had serious injuries, still here in serious condition, and the other patients had some minor injuries. Really everything he said, from smoke inhalation all the way to traumatic blast injuries. But officials here at the hospital say that they are ready for more patients if need be. So they've activated what they call an emergency management plan. And what that means really is that the hospital, Lawrence General, is fully operational. So they've called in additional doctors, additional nurses, as well as staff. But again, when I was speaking to the chief of medicine earlier, he said if more patients need to come in, they're ready.
We were notified that there was an explosion, most likely from a gas leak, and that we would be expecting multiple patients. From that, we've ended up treating at least 10, probably around 12 patients of varying degrees of severity. They're still coming in at this point. Most recently, the ones that have been coming in have been of less severity. The first wave of patients were the most severe, and it seems like it's tailing off somewhat now, but my understanding is that it's still not under control. The gas leaks haven't been contained at this point, so we're still prepared for possibly more patients.
So again, here at Lawrence General, they say they have treated at least 10 patients, probably more like a dozen, one in critical, one in serious, and the rest with minor injuries. In fact, he said some of those patients have been allowed to leave. So that's the latest here outside Lawrence General Hospital. I'm Brandon Gano, 7 News 19.
It's been such a tough evening, and it will go on for many people, but in the middle of all of this devastation, we are seeing signs of community coming together.
We're happy to share this, at least bit of good news with you in the midst of this. Firefighters from York, Maine, they posted these pictures to Facebook. They're going to grill these hamburgers for first responders at the command center, and boy, they've got a lot of grub there. Bless you people for doing that. The post reads, special thanks to Market Basket here in Lawrence for opening their doors and allowing us to take a dozen cars full of food.
And the MSPCA is doing its part to help animals in need. It is accepting animals affected by the fires at its Nevins Farm shelter. Of course, a lot of people want to stay with their pets, but when it's not an option, they are available. And so far, they tell us 4 dogs and 5 cats are being cared for.
Before we pause and take a quick break, a recap. 3 communities in the Commonwealth, Lawrence, Andover, North Andover, without power tonight. Homes still some perhaps at danger of having dangerous levels of gas inside after a gas line pressure issue. That's to put it plain and simple. There are injuries, one of them critical, we know, and we're working to get the latest on the news station. We're back after a short break. News at 10 is back with breaking news regarding what happened today in 3 different communities and towns here in New England.
Unfortunately, we have news that we hoped we wouldn't have to report. Let's go to Steve Cooper live.
Kim, sources are telling us tonight that 1 person has been killed in connection with the series of gas explosions here in the Merrimack Valley today. Again, our sources are telling us that 1 person has passed away in connection with what happened here earlier today. All this unfolding a little bit after 5 o'clock tonight. It all began here in Lawrence, where the first explosion involved a house that basically blew itself apart. The chimney from that house came crashing down on a car, trapping a man inside. He was transported to the hospital. There was another injury, at least 1 more injury at that house. And then it was shortly after that explosion that police and firefighters here in Lawrence and also in Andover and North Andover were scrambling from one call after another. More than 70 calls in all between those 3 communities here early tonight, and it was just a chaotic scene with police going door to door, knocking on doors, begging people to get out and get out of harm's way. They left their houses with nothing. They ran to safety. All the while, firefighters from here in the Merrimack Valley, mutual aid called in, scrambling to put out the flames from these gas explosions. Now, the governor spoke earlier tonight with limited information in terms of why all this happened, what happened. Again, all of that, he says, remains under investigation tonight. But several people have been injured. We now can confirm, according to a source, that 1 person has been killed in connection with these gas explosions. Several others, as you know, we've reported, are at the hospital being treated for various injuries. The whole area here in the Merrimack Valley remains off limits tonight. The gas has been shut off. Power has been shut off to thousands. There are several emergency shelters that have opened up earlier and will remain open through the night. And now police are out patrolling to make sure these neighborhoods are safe tonight, as all of this, the investigation, just getting underway right now. We're live in Lawrence tonight. Steve Cooper, 7 News 19.
Steve, we're looking now at the pictures here on the screen with you of the house that exploded behind you. And I know that a woman was taken from the inside, and you may have just said this, has leg injuries. But just the timing, when you see that chimney just precisely on that vehicle, it's incomprehensible. And I'm also wondering, was there anybody else in that house?
Kim, there were other people in that house. In fact, we talked to several neighbors here who heard the explosion and ran to the scene, and they tell us that there were other people in that house, and somehow they managed to get out of that house. Again, a chaotic scene. One neighbor saying when he arrived on the scene, there were 2 people in the driveway on the ground. Now, their conditions unknown right now because, again, after the firefighters came to the scene and the ambulances came to the scene here, these are firefighters that scrambled to these other locations, these dozens and dozens of other locations. So literally, they were basically putting out one fire and going to the next fire. So you can just imagine how chaotic it is. And that's one of the reasons that when we heard the governor earlier tonight, very limited on the amount of information that they're giving out on exactly how they moved about to handle these fires. The extent of injuries, the governor not really talking about that right now. One of the reasons why is they want to make sure that family members have been notified. They want to follow a certain protocol and make sure that they do this in a way that family members know about what happened here. But as you can imagine, just a chaotic scene. It was a chaotic scene here. It was a chaotic scene in Andover and North Andover. In fact, I have to tell you, I talked to the police chief in North Andover. He told me that he was actually taking his kids to football practice this afternoon right around 5 o'clock when he saw the first fire, and he ran into the house banging on doors trying to make sure that everyone was out of that house. And believe it or not, when that was happening, his young son said to him, "Dad, there's smoke coming out from another house." The chief ran up to the next house, again, ran into the house. There was flames coming out of the basement of the house, again, scrambling through the house, trying to rescue anybody he could. And again, this was all even before some of the first firefighters arrived on the scene. That story playing out in Andover, it was playing out here in Lawrence, and all at the same time. Well, these emergency responders admit they just had no idea, simply no idea what was happening as it was happening tonight.
Well, on that note, I don't care how old it gets saying it because it doesn't. Our thanks and appreciation to those law enforcement officials and their families, and also condolences to the people who lost someone they love very much today so unexpectedly, Steve. Can you just give me a sense of that neighborhood behind you right now? Are the evacuations mandatory, or do people have the option to stay if they decide that they think things are okay for them?
Adam, it's lights out here, and earlier tonight we did see residents around here, but they cut the power to this neighborhood, and I'm just checking to make sure that that is still the case, and it is the case. We've seen a few people come back here with flashlights and sort of go into their house, grab a few things, and then leave the area. People just don't feel safe tonight. They don't know what happened here. They don't know why it happened here, and no one's taking any chances. We talked to a number of residents who literally ran into the scene when they saw that house collapse and saw people lying in the driveway, calling 911 for help. You can just imagine how chaotic that was. Originally, a few hours ago, there were people out on the streets. It was daylight out. They were sort of meandering about here, trying to process everything that happened, trying to understand what was happening, where they should go. But then it got dark. And then it got really dark when they cut the power into this area, and we have not seen people around here. Earlier, we were asked about the security here, and keep in mind, when we arrived here, I literally was looking down the streets, and there were state troopers and Lawrence police officers banging on people's doors and windows and trying to pull doors open and yelling for people to get out. And they'd run across the front lawn and go to another house and another, just zigzagging down the street. Their cruisers were halfway down the street, and this is what they were doing. And at that point, people just simply didn't know where to go. Well, there's shelters that have opened up. A lot of people around here just don't want to come back here right now till they can be assured that it's safe to be here. One thing the police are doing to assure residents, especially if they're listening at friends' houses or neighbors' houses, or they've gone out of the area or they're at shelters, police are here. They have these roads blocked off, and they're going street to street, crisscrossing the street to make sure that people know that they are watching their houses. Adam, people left here today with nothing, and they left here. They didn't lock up their houses. There are unsecured houses up and down every street here. People just scramble to safety. So tonight, police are making sure that this area is safe and stays safe before any of these residents begin coming back, perhaps by tomorrow morning.
All right, Steve Cooper, continuing your live reports and updated information, and we have learned a little bit more about the sobering news we brought you just moments ago.
Any loss is a loss, but we're now hearing from the district attorney that the person who died, the man who died at that house behind Steve in the explosion, was actually a young man, only 18 years old, in that vehicle when the house exploded and the chimney came crashing down.
You know, setting the scene and remembering that person and his family. I had a viewer email me earlier today talking about that swimming pool in the backyard, and she said, you know, you look at that and think about the summer memories they just had in that home, and then out of the blue on this September day, that. And added to that the loss, the tragic loss of an 18-year-old killed. The update we're getting right now. And remarkably, we learned earlier, Kim, when you were talking with our reporters out in the field, that there are reports that there were at least several people in this house who remarkably made it out. One woman with leg injuries we've reported, but unfortunately we have learned the very sad and unfortunate outcome for this 18-year-old and his family or friends.
The timing is just so sad and unfortunate, and because it was Steve reporting that there were a couple people down in the driveway, and then I believe that a woman inside was trapped, so you get the sense that this family perhaps was just coming home from something, and it's just awful. Now an 18-year-old has passed as a result of this news that we've been covering all day, these explosions and fires, and we are still uncertain of the exact cause, but we know for sure it caused a lot of devastation and then this loss.
It may be a frivolous point here, but now we're looking live over the house where the explosion occurred and where the 18-year-old was killed. And, you know, you see this image, and typically if there's any sort of accident, people come out and they make a makeshift memorial. We show those to you all the time on TV. Our reporters are standing out there with candles and bears and anything to remember the person, and they can't even do that tonight because the area is still deemed unsafe and people have had to evacuate. But one of the many scenes of tragedy and just really unfortunate to report to you this information that's coming in, but just one of many places, one of many families affected today as this unfolded. And at this hour, we continue to ask a lot of questions. We've had a lot cleared up today, certainly since we first saw this image and others when we had no idea what was going on, when we couldn't even confirm whether this was a utility problem or something else. And throughout our coverage, we've learned a lot more, and I think that the news has been frightening for a lot of people, understandably, but luckily I don't think people have panicked all that much, but knowing that this has happened before and it's happened today, it gives everyone a bit of unease, and that's understandable, and I think we're all feeling that together tonight, no matter where you live, but especially in and around these three communities affected. We all live in homes. A lot of us, most of us have natural gas fed into our homes. So you got to just sit back and think for a second, could have been me. And many people tonight are saying that, including the people who live here and lost someone they loved, if in fact that was where the 18-year-old lived.
Yeah, well, we all just rely on it, right? You turn on the switch, so to speak, and you rely on it, and you just don't. And what we were hearing from the expert was there is a regulator that failed, and then a backup regulator likely failed. So the investigation is just beginning, and this will be a primary focus. We've already seen gas workers there investigating, but as we've said, there's the FBI, the NTSB, so they'll all be trying to figure it out. We'll get some answers, but it doesn't turn the clock back and bring back the person who died, this young man, and these homes that so many people loved and are out of tonight. Yeah, and we actually, we were talking about how grateful we are to the police officers and the firefighters, and one of the people who lost their homes was this Lawrence police officer. Tim Caputo is in that neighborhood right now.
Here you guys talk about a difference of a couple seconds or a couple minutes, the unfortunate situation of that 18-year-old who was killed outside of his home. Obviously, seconds and minutes matter in emergencies like this. When this home behind me caught fire and the folks who were inside were able to kind of spot that smoke early enough and able to get outside unharmed. Unfortunately, that fire continued to burn. And even worse than that, the firefighters had a hard time getting here because so many of the Lawrence Fire Department was tied up at other explosions explosions and other fires all around town. The folks were able to get outside, but that fire burned through the front windows of this house. Then soon after that, the entire front facade of this house caught fire. And really, before any firefighters could get to the scene and start spraying the home down with water, this home was fully engulfed in flames. Obviously, the difficulty here when you have a home that burns for that long without having firefighters trying to prevent it from spreading, that fire just goes all over the place. It went up into the attic, up into the roof of this home, and the entire home burned to the ground. You don't often see a home with this much damage because firefighters were able to get here at a decent amount of time to be able to prevent it from at least spreading to all parts of the house. Unfortunately for the folks who own this home, this fire took away absolutely everything, gutting this entire house. And for a lot of folks, it was really a heart-wrenching moment this afternoon because as this was all happening, a lot of us kind of watched live as this home caught fire and the fire spread, and there was nothing really anyone could do about it. You watched the fire spread to the roof of this house before the firefighters even got there, and I think everyone was kind of thinking the same thing, which was, first of all, I hope everyone got out of this home, which thankfully they did in time. But secondly, you're wondering, well, where are the firefighters? When are they going to get here? When are they going to start spraying down this house to prevent this fire from completely taking away this home from this family? And unfortunately, the Lawrence Fire Department was tied up all over town. It was actually the mutual aid that ended up coming here and starting to spray down the house. Lowell firefighters were the first on scene, assisted by the Salem, New Hampshire Fire Department as well, who also came out here to start spraying down the house. But unfortunately, by the time they got here with their ladder trucks and hooking up to the fire hydrants here, the damage had already been done. You want to come back out here live. I want to show you a little bit too, because the video you saw, the blue house that we've been kept mentioning, the blue house on Jefferson Street, you could see a little bit of the siding there is blue. Those 3 steps there, brick steps obviously withstanding the heat and the flames of the fire, but that's all that really remains. The 2 front windows of the home were just to the left of those stairs. That's where that fire initially started coming out of the house and up into the roof, and this is where the entire front facade of the house initially burned, working its way up through the roof and also back to the back of the house. And right now, standing here as dark as it is, you could essentially see the back door and the backyard of this house. You guys also mentioned the homeowner here, the father of this household, a Lawrence police officer. He was on duty, actually got called back here, checked on his family, made sure they were out of the house okay, and then essentially checked with the rest of the neighborhood to make sure other folks were okay, and anyone else who may have needed to evacuate from their home got out safely from that home. He realized at that point when he got to this home and it was looking not quite as this bad, but pretty much a total loss, there was not much he could do. So he went on his way. He got called to something else, just as the other firefighters who fought this fire got called to something else. And everyone, all those first responders, just kept responding to different incidents all over town. Unfortunately, this home completely destroyed by this fire this afternoon. The good news here to report is the folks who were inside here late this afternoon were able to get out safely unharmed, but obviously lost everything. Kim?
Tim, it's Adam back here with you. And, you know, aside from the fatality that we've unfortunately had to report and the people who are recovering at the hospital, I'm thinking a lot about the thousands of people who are not in their homes tonight. They suddenly had to go stay at a friend's, a relative's, a hotel, a shelter. And so I'm just trying to get the sense of what that has been like. And thanks for pointing behind you, because that's exactly what I was going to ask you. In this specific neighborhood, do you know where people have gone in general?
You know, once the fire was essentially out and people kind of went back to their homes after seeing, the damage to this house, we saw them walking down the street with luggage, dragging it down the street like they were going to the airport with carry bags, just essentially enough clothes to get them through the night, potentially longer than that. We caught a couple of them as they were walking by, and they said, we're just staying with a friend. And that's what I think a lot of people had to do. You got to remember, too, this all happened at a time where a lot of folks were coming home from work. So there's not a real lot of time to figure out what you're going to do, what you're going to grab with you. For the folks that live in these neighborhoods, the power was already out at that point. So when they come home, it was still light out. You could grab things inside your house, but they realized, it was going to get dark soon. There was going to be no electricity, and there was still this kind of looming fear about the concern of a natural gas explosion or potential fire. And I want to bring you up this way. I know you can't really see much, but I want to show you in both directions here because the power is completely out in this neighborhood, and it is absolutely pitch dark in every direction you look. The only light we have now that you see up the street are from our lights. So if we weren't even here, you wouldn't have lights up the streets. We have seen the occasional police officer driving through. I talked to a couple of them a short time ago just to ask them kind of lay of the land what they're doing right now. They said this entire neighborhood where we are is completely shut down to traffic. They're not letting any homeowners in. They're not letting any folks in. They're telling people who already evacuated, that's it for the night. Maybe tomorrow morning we could reassess, but at the moment they're just keeping these streets and these neighborhoods clear. Part of the reason we're seeing the officers here and there is they're patrolling through the neighborhoods to make sure nothing happens. We had heard some reports of potential break-ins. No arrests have been made. No, it's not really clear at this point if they were actual break-ins or people calling it in, but they do have patrols still going on. But a lot of the folks, they essentially left with the clothes on their back, maybe one overnight bag, because they don't really know how long it'll last. And it happened between 5 and 6 o'clock. The sun's setting around 7, 8 o'clock. They grabbed the bag, slung it over their shoulder, and said, hey, let's go stay with a family member and stay with a friend for the night. When the sun comes up tomorrow morning, we'll maybe reassess and figure it out from there. But a lot of folks essentially left with just what they had on them, maybe grab one little to-go bag, and that's about it. And at the moment, you see behind me, it is pitch darkness back here. It is quiet here. This is as quiet as this neighborhood will ever get. Not a single person home, just the occasional police officer doing their routine patrols around these neighborhoods to make sure the homes stay safe and nobody breaks in. Adam, Kim.
All right, Tim Caputo reporting live for us tonight, and obviously people are wanting to know when they might get the all clear, when they might return to their homes. We heard from the governor and other town and city officials earlier tonight, and they don't have any information on that yet, but when asked if they'd have another update before the midnight hour, the governor said okay. So we're watching for that, and we'll continue to update you on this big breaking news of the day here on the news station. Stay with us. Continue to follow the breaking news affecting Lawrence, North Andover, and Andover. Here is the scene of the house where a young man died today. An 18-year-old killed when a chimney from that house fell right on that vehicle in the driveway. It just exploded from the inside out. One of many houses damaged today, either by explosion or fire. And now everybody's asking why and when can I go home?
We will continue our coverage here in Lawrence with 7's Sharman Sacchetti out in one of the neighborhoods severely impacted by this earlier today. Sharman, just a quick question. This is going to sound unorthodox, but correct me if I'm wrong. Are you from the Lawrence area? Did you grow up in that area?
I did. I grew up on the north side of the city in Prospect Hill.
So I asked just because I'm wondering if you could tell people who aren't from that area about the resilience of Lawrence and about what you know about that city, because a lot of us are praying and thinking about the people affected there tonight.
Well, I think that there are a lot of people certainly worried, certainly, for the people of Lawrence. They are good people. They are strong people. And, yes, they are extremely resilient people. I can tell you, having grown up here, having gone to school here, I have never seen this before in my life. And we've heard that a lot tonight. But I can tell you I'm standing here in the middle of South Lawrence right now on Springfield Street. And you know, you can see the light behind me, but that's us. That's our truck. Right now, it's very, very dark out here. Once in a while, you see police cars come by. They're cruising by just to make sure everything is safe and people are safe. You hear choppers overhead. But I have never seen anything like this. The power is shut off. We're on Springfield Street, where there was a massive fire earlier tonight. The power is shut off. The gas is shut off. There are a couple of folks still walking around and making their way. We have somebody over here on a bicycle, and we have a police officer right behind him cruising down the street, just making sure things are okay. Earlier today, there was that massive fire just down at the end of the street in an apartment building, and we spoke with someone who told us that, in fact, there were like 5 other fires in areas area buildings as well. Not just that one, certainly not as dramatic as that one. His name was Michael Rivera, and he came home after going out shopping. He came home to find his boiler was on fire. He said he took his mother and they got out of the house and they found that they weren't alone. Other people were just streaming out into the street and making their way out into the street. We're in the South Lawrence section, which is, one of the areas that was hardest hit, certainly. And so it was really just some terrifying moments for people. Can you imagine just, coming home and finding your basement on fire and just only having a few minutes to get out of the house? And so really, a credit to all the first responders. We see police officers coming down the street back and forth. We've seen firefighters heroically rushing into these buildings or at least attempting to put out these fires. And so it's certainly been a chaotic evening, and I think there are a lot of people who are exhausted here, who are just hoping they get some answers and are able to make it back to their homes. But right now, the majority of people on the street have, in fact, heeded the warnings. They have gone ahead and they have evacuated many, many, many people. We've seen a couple who are still sort of lingering about, trying to make their way to wherever they may be. But for the most part, everyone on this street has, in fact, has left for the evening.
Well, Charmin, it's interesting the story you showed about Mr. Rivera and his mother, because we were looking at these pictures and we'd always see like the picture we're seeing actually next to you now of so much smoke coming out of a structure with no flames. But you describe him seeing the boiler on fire in the basement. So maybe there were a lot of flames, but it took a long time before they evolved and went up. So the other, oh, go ahead. I can tell you have something to add.
Well, that was in his own basement. Remember, so that was down the street. That was at 63 Springfield. And then he said he came home. He saw that. He came home and found his own basement on fire. He found his own boiler on fire. And he said there were several other hot spots. He said there were firefighters and police officers running door to door, essentially saying, shut off the gas here. So it was quite a scene here, Kim, certainly.
I can't believe, we had the aerial views and you would see just so random, the house here and the house there, and of course the apartment building that you're near there that was just incredible the way it was on. Did you talk to anybody who was in there? I can't believe that there must be a lot of people who live in that building and everyone got out.
It was definitely one firefighter was injured, and right now the information we have is that people were okay, that everybody is okay at this point. That is the information we've been given right now to date.
All right, well, updating the injuries. Thank you. Sharma Saketa reporting live from South Lawrence, the site of a number of losses today. 10 people at Lawrence General being treated. One person who had been reported in critical condition all day has passed. An 18-year-old who died at the site of an explosion. Still a person who is in serious condition tonight. And Sharman mentioned some firefighters who had to be treated for some minor injuries.
Appreciate Sharman sharing a bit of her personal life with us, growing up in Lawrence, in North Lawrence, but she's a good person and she represents Lawrence well, and I believe they'll be in good hands with that kind of attitude. Another words we've heard today, and Sharman was reporting the police going around telling people to shut off the gas when all this was going on. Well, I got to be honest with you, Kim, and to our viewers at home. If somebody came to my house and said, shut off the gas, I wouldn't know where to go. So if there's anything to be learned from this, if lives can be saved down the road because of this, maybe that's the silver lining. Learn where your shut-off valve is, because this can happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. It's like, where's the fuse box? Where's the water turn-off? I mean, we all kind of just rely on all this stuff, these utilities and such, and have really no idea how it works. We just count on it to work for us. So today, it didn't work in Lawrence, Andover, and North Andover.
You're watching 7 News. We will take a short break and invite you to stick around for 7 News at 11 for the day's news, including all-out coverage of these incidents in North Andover, and Lawrence.